Thank you very much for visiting my channel. If not difficult, like and subscribe to my channel to always be aware of events. Thank. The Ukrainian advance has been so swift that fleeing Russian troops have left behind a logistics bonanza of ammunition, equipment and most of all seemingly fully functioning heavy weapons. Of the sort that Kyiv has been crying out for from its Western partners for months. The offensive south of Kharkiv, which began last Tuesday, took the thinly defended Russian lines by surprise, leading to Western intelligence agencies speaking of mass retreats, mass surrenders and mass casualties that the Russian Ministry of Defense has dressed up as a regrouping. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenkov said Saturday that troops fleeing from the Balaklia and Izium areas would be regrouped to Ukraine's occupied Donetsk region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Russian forces were making a good decision in fleeing a counter-offensive by his country that has made significant gains in the east and south. Mr. Zelensky's comments, in a video released by his office, came hours after Moscow said it was pulling back troops in part of the Kharkiv region, where Ukrainian forces have taken control of substantial territory in recent days. The Russian army in these days is showing the best that it can do, showing its back, the president said. And, of course, it's a good decision for them to run. Natalia Popova, advisor to the head of Kharkiv Regional Council, shared images on social media of Ukrainian troops holding their flag in front of Kupiansk City Hall with a crumpled Russian flag at their feet. The town was seized by Russia within days of their invasion in February. Kupiansk is Ukraine. Glory to the armed forces of Ukraine, wrote Popova. Russian military journalists yesterday reported that their troops fled Izium on the only remaining road in another sign of the apparent rout, which has seen Putin's forces lose control of an estimated 3,000 square kilometers in days. The dramatic advances follow President Volodymyr Zelensky's declaration last Friday night that 30 settlements had been liberated in Kharkiv region over the past few days as his forces sliced through a weak spot in Russian lines. The capture of Kupiansk, if confirmed, is a huge setback for Putin that potentially leaves up to 10,000 Kremlin troops cut off from supplies. Abandoned boxes of ammunition in the town underlined the speed of their retreat. The latest reports indicate that the town of Limon fell to Ukrainian liberators with little resistance. It is located just 25 miles from the twin cities of Lysychansk and Severodonetsk that fell to Russian forces at the start of July after a long and grinding battle. There are even unconfirmed reports of Ukrainian forces entering Donetsk International Airport, the subject of two separate battles between Ukrainian and pro-Moscow forces in 2014 and 2015. The airport has been in rebel-held hands for over 8 years, and its return to Ukrainian control would signal Kyiv's first recovery of territory lost that predates Putin's February 24 invasion. Denis Pushilin, the head of the separatist Donetsk People's Republic, reported on the fighting amid rumors that he had fled Donetsk. The situation in Limon remains quite difficult, he said in a video post from a moving car. Just like a number of other locations in the north of the republic. And Serhiy Haidai, the Russia-installed governor of the Luhansk region, said that Ukrainian units had even reached the outskirts of Lysychansk itself. Lysychansk, a great Ukrainian city. There will be a lot of reconstruction work, he said in a cryptic message. In Rakov, one of the recaptured villages, eyewitness told of seeing burned-out military vehicles bearing the hated Z symbol of the Kremlin invasion. There was also more evidence of Russian atrocities. One local man disclosed that the occupiers forced him to bury 2 bodies at gunpoint. He then led police to a grave that contained a pair of corpses showing signs of torture. Ukraine has made stunning advances in a rapid counter-offensive that has caught the Kremlin by surprise, with intelligence experts hailing a major turning point in the 6-month war. It has led to the recapture of several key towns in the east as Vladimir Putin's forces fled in disarray from a collapsing front line. The speed of advance, with photographs shared by Kyiv officials of their troops raising the Ukrainian flag in liberated towns after advancing more than 30 miles, has sparked open talk in Moscow that their invasion will end in humiliating defeat. Towns entered by Ukrainian troops include Kupiansk, a key rail center whose loss would severely hinder Russian supply lines. There are also reports of Putin's troops and collaborators fleeing Izium, another crucial logistics hub for the invasion.